The theme this week in many of my sessions has been be true to yourself. And this is coming with a rainbow. So, what does that mean in this context? I mean, there's so many different avenues of that, but today I'm talking a little bit more about small little decisions we make in our daily routines. And I wonder if you're able to hear there's like a really big thunderstorm happening outside. The thunder is loud, which for some reason I kind of love right now. I'm not sure why. Um, After the storm brings some clarity and renewal, right? So I've had several conversations with at least three different clients within a 3 day span of time. And this is how I am starting to be made very aware of what are the messages that I'm intended to bring forward here and to share. Obviously, I get more information than just like noticing the patterns to it. And so I don't think about or plan for what I'm going to share in these videos. I let that be very led and channeled by spirit. So if there's a full week that I don't record anything, I let that be. I don't have like a determined frequency or plan. I let it flow, which kind of is going to tie into this conversation that we're going to have about healing and routines versus flexibility, including mental flexibility. So, some of these conversations have been about people saying, I love routines and I have this certain routine. And if I don't eat dinner at this specific time every single night, I start to feel quite a level of agitation or angst. Or, if I don't exercise this amount of time with this level of consistency, I am feeling really yucky inside and not good about myself, and um, start dropping into some self-deprecation and shame spiral, things like that. And so there's variance for people. Some people are a little more seat of the pants type of spontaneity, go with the flow just in disposition, and others benefit more, gravitate more to routines and consistency. And maybe like some of that probably ties into spectrum of introversion, extroversion, all those things, which you never zone yourself into one solid category because then you're becoming too rigid with it. Introverts like to have time in connection and social, you know, gatherings, belonging, all those kind of things. So it's once you start defining yourself in such a dichotomous, dualistic, this is who I am, this category way, that sometimes can be an indication of over identifying. So, yes, we all need routines for some probably like rather obvious reasons of, that sense of safety and stability, and just like a tethering, a groundedness is healthy for human beings. And we see that even with child development. I'll have people that I've worked with who have moved, um, and gone to like 10 different schools in their primary education, from age of 4 or 5 to 17. They've been to 10 different schools. And that in and of itself, developmentally, is not a very healthy thing. That can be its own trauma, really. So, that to just affirm there's a place and space and need for routines to bring safety, stability, that Maslow's hierarchy, the bottom rung of that is like all of those things: safety, stability, security. I know where I'm going to sleep at night. I know where I'm going to wake up. I know where my income is coming from. Like, I know I'm going to be okay, not just today, but tomorrow. And when I have all of those needs in place, I can advance up to different levels of healing and ascension and self actualizing, right? So routines, yes, good stuff. Over identifying with the routines and recognizing that I don't have flexibility within that and room for some variance because I have rigidness around my routines with myself. When I don't feel like doing this, I can't honor my body's need to rest without feeling an undue collapsing sense of internal turmoil, right? And then my anxiety is through the roof if there's a night that I haven't exercised. So this can then lead to, force and tension. I'm a little tiny, like if we have a day where we've exercised 3 days in a row, and then on the fourth day we're like, I was thinking I was going to exercise tonight, but now I'm realizing, like, oh, my body is craving to take a hot bath and go to bed early and just really like rest and nourish myself, and we can't do that, and we cause some resistance and some tension and force in that dynamic. There's a way in which you can view that as these small little acts of self abandonment, self betrayal, right? When you have that, I am imprisoned to the rigidness of this schedule to such a point that there are times where it actually doesn't serve me. And then I push through and I force myself to exercise, regardless of what my body is telling me that it needs, to the point then I end up getting sick. Why does this happen? This is a connection to when we're young and we have trauma, or just things in our life feel very much out of control. We feel out of control. And in many ways, we are when we're a kid like that. I mean, there's dependency and a lot of things that are outside of your control when you're a child, in the family of origin dynamics, etc. So when you have that massive, overwhelming sense of I feel out of control, and I have like huge emotions that I'm not sure what to do with them, we can experience some projection and externalizing of that that can tighten down on what can I control, what is within my control, and that can bring a sense of control, a sense of ease, or some temporary relief to those out of control feelings. So this is where a lot of high anxiety based symptoms are underneath these umbrellas that manifest into some obsessions, compulsions, organizing. I need to have these things in this very specific way in my external environment in order to glean a sense of safety and security and stability. Like, okay, this is positioned just right. That's over there. And I followed my routine. I exercised right at 6:30, like I said I would, and not at 7. And um, and when we're a child, that can bring, like I said, there's a reason that these things develop, and we want to be able to find a spot of honoring that. You're not defective, you're not faulty. At a time when you were younger, when things genuinely were out of your control, your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit did the best it could, and finding a way to cling onto something that did feel like it was in your control, that was in the external environment, it did bring you some relief. So let's honor that. But now that you're an adult, this is more of an illusion of control, and it may be more imprisoning than soothing at this point in time. So that rigidness can be indicator of there's something, that internal chaos, that deep woundedness, that worthiness that is manifesting in these like codependent patterns, or manifestations of these illusions of control. The more we do that healing work, that trauma focused, deep spiritual healing work, and you just notice yourself stepping into a place of, my deep sense of safety, security, and worthiness is internal. It will allow you to have more flexibility and freedom, release, sovereignty from those formerly, rigid kind of routines, right? Will you still have routines? Yes. But within those routines will be much more flexibility so that you can arrive at flow. Because if you have a routine that is so rigid, how can you live in presence? Because you are energy, you are vibrations, right? You are nature. There needs to be flow with that. And you are trapping yourself and denying your ability to have any flow if you're imprisoned by that rigidness, which is going to kick you out of presence, because you need to be able to honor what your body, what your soul, what your heart is telling you from moment to moment. That requires presence, which makes sense, of course, when it comes to recognizing, there's some deep parts of me that need some tending to, and some nurturing, and some healing, some purging, some releasing, all of those things, so that I can arrive more at home within myself, and to know that I am deeply rooted in myself, which means where I go, there's my sense of home. It is wherever I am. And that allows more freedom, more peace on that internal basis. So if you have those massive unhealed wounds that are internal, I imagine the last thing that you want to do is sit down inside of presence, because that can feel a little bit scary. I think sometimes people feel concerned that they're going to be, instead of being able to ride the waves and surf on top of those emotions, the rise and the fall, and let the release and the experience and the emotional processing happen, they have this fearful illusion that, like, if I open that floodgate, it's not going to be a wave, it's going to be a tsunami, and I am going to be underneath the riptides of that, getting smashed off of coral, and I'll drown. And that's not what is going to happen. I should say, like, when you are properly supported and working with a professional who does that trauma work, they will make sure that that is not what happens for you. This is not about re-traumatizing. You are in good hands, and it will be relief. There's none of the process in working with me that feels like, okay, I've got to, like, brace for it, you know what I mean, or like, get ready to do this trauma work. Like, no, this is like Relief. This is relief. Through the full process of it, you are noticing piece by piece this unfolding relief and this healing journey. And when you're on that other side of the healing, you'll be more capable of honoring your needs, your desires, yourself in general, without the shame and the guilt or the collapsing anxiety of, you know, straying from a routine, and finding that to be flexibility and freedom rather than a source of tension and a trigger to internal conflict that pre-existed that routine, really, right? So if this message really resonates, or you're wanting some more validation on this for yourself, of follow that journey toward the healing and the recognizing these small little moments in your very mundane day to day functioning, where you can be more self honoring and find a little more presence and a little bit more flow, rather than being tied to these, mental constructs or rigidness, than the sign I would say for you to be mindful of that might come to you in your daily life from spirit as validation is a rainbow. That came up several times in much more than one session when this theme was happening. So look for the rainbows and know when you see that this is, what are small, tiny little ways that you can be more true to yourself? And I just want to give a little tiny example of this. I mean, there's so many. I'm certainly on this journey myself of releasing some of those constructs and those schemas that no longer serve me and are not necessary as I have gone through this latest transformation in my life. And one of them is, now I am my own boss, and I'm full time in my private practice and have been for probably, like, is it about 6 months at this point? And very recently, I had a little gap in my schedule, and I thought, oh, I need to get some paperwork done. And I was like, oh, I really don't feel like sitting in my office to do paperwork. It just like sounds like a bummer to have to do that. And it took a minute for me to recognize, oh, you don't have to. Like, you have freedoms here that you're not even taking full advantage of because your mental space and constructs haven't, um, are lagging behind the changes you've made in your life, and you're still getting used to that, right? I'm like, I'm my own boss. I'm going to take my laptop and go down to a local cafe, get a cup of coffee and sit in the corner, and that will feel much better to do my notes in that environment, in that vibe, and get a little break from being in the same setting, right? So be true to yourself.